So, hi, Sebastian. It's March. Up where I live, it's still snowing. So, how are you
Hello,
doing
Layla.
over there?
Baby woke up at 3 a.m., so
Oh,
not my sharpest today, but I had a coffee, so hopefully I'll still be able to do well now. But yeah,
ah,
dad life.
yeah. It's you will miss it. Weirdly enough, you will
Like
miss it.
waking up at 3 a.m. on a weekday when you have to work, I'll miss that part.
Yes, yes, you
Yeah,
will.
okay, okay.
I
Good to
promise.
know. I'll
You
appreciate
will
it more.
reminisce. You will reminisce back. Ah, remember the days when I couldn't. And you're not going to form any memories. Short-term memory shot. Anyway.
But yeah, anyway, there's that. Then there's obviously a lot going on way beyond CDR that makes, which I also wrote about in the newsletter, which yeah is tough to deal with these days. And yeah, it's not an easy time, I think, and
No.
it's like it's hard to stay focused. It's the only thing that we can do is to stay focused on the next step ahead,
Yes.
right? That we can take. And but it takes a lot of discipline these days. And writing the GigaTen is actually exactly that for me. It's kind of, okay, screw it. Like, I'm still going to do this. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to do this. Right. And yeah, so I'm glad that we get to do this and have a chat and stick to it because
Exactly,
we have
right?
to.
Stick to it. Well, that's what I was saying maybe in our preamble that was a bit more private is that, uh, we have to do what it is we can do in our world, right?
Exactly.
Regardless of if there's success or failure or whatever it is, one has to just create their world and make it as good as they possibly can. And I have a prayer these days that said, let the good in all hearts prevail. That's all you can
Let
do.
it.
Is just hope for that,
And with
right?
that, shall we dig in?
Yes, let's go. So, number one, we have CDR, but make it EU certified. So, did the
The
EU
100th
finally
time we talk,
certify? Yes,
and it's
they
still not
finally
going to
did
be
it.
the last. No,
Okay.
EU policy making is a very complex beast, and we've had many EU CSCF, the certification framework, kind of news on this show. What's happened now is that the Commission has basically published its carbon removal methodologies for certification, which is a big step. There are still two
Mhm.
small formal steps, one of which actually happened by the time we recorded, which was the Parliament, where there's been actually some last minute unexpected resistance, but that didn't make it through. And the Council seems a formality. But anyway, they were published. It was a big step. It elicited all sorts of reactions. There are some people who think it's a fantastic, great next step. There are some people, especially in the NGO community, who think that the CSCF should be completely abolished. And so it's still, it remains heated, but despite the debate, we're on track for this to be implemented. So by the end of the year, we should actually have the first certified removals, and that is a good thing, in my opinion.
That is a good thing. Small, but yet significant progress, right? Slowly but surely.
Exactly.
Um, Uh, Sidebar on DAC, I was just thinking, with this disruption in energy, there might be more of an interest in DAC. I mean, I see that they certified DAC, BECS, and BCR. Um, but
I mean,
anyway,
DAC,
local
we're gonna
energy
have
production.
big discussions about DAC, I think, in the future. The whole energy system
Right.
in many ways is changing. So I think we
Yes,
will be talking about DAC a lot.
that is going to be absolutely on deck for sure. Number two, the EU ETS. We've been talking about that as well. What happened there? Looks like some people aren't excited anymore.
It's really heating up because there's a
Oh,
revision of the ETS
yeah.
scheduled for mid of the year. I mean, as a reminder, I've dug into the numbers as I like to do, and the European emission trading system has been by far the most impactful climate policy humanity's ever created. It's expected to have reduced 2 gigatons of emissions to date,
Mhm.
which is huge. But it's also, how has it done it? It has put a price on carbon that keeps going up, and European industry is struggling, and what's happening in Iran is not helping. And so there have been some very forceful critics, amongst others, the German Chancellor Merz,
Yeah.
the Italian Prime Minister Meloni, who've come out with very strong statements. And the problem is that this system, the ETS, which is 20 years old, the whole reason it functions so well and that it has become so interesting for capital markets and financial players is because of its long term predictability and the trust it instills. So when a German chancellor comes in and says, we should rethink it, or an Italian prime minister comes in and says, we should reduce the cost of carbon, it screws up the predictability that investors rely on. And we saw that, and the price tanked. It went from like 85 euros to like 68 in the span of 2 weeks. And the glimmer of hope here, I would say, is Spain. Interestingly, Spain is kind of establishing itself as the green leader in Europe, the only big country that's putting its weight behind it. And again, I tried to dig into the numbers, and this is where it gets so interesting. Spain has managed the energy transition better than any other big country. Portugal has also done pretty well, but Germany has not. France has not. Italy has not. They have. They've had a big bet on renewables, which is paying off. And so they're looking to gain from a price of carbon. And so they're really fighting for it. But anyway, this is a debate in the making, but we're seeing top level political engagement, and everyone is watching this in Europe right now.
That's really interesting. Wow. I love that. Number 3, Germany continues to bet on CDR. So in all of that, they're
exactly, despite all the mess that the German chancellor is starting to unleash.
Right. That's strange.
There's a steadfast commitment to carbon removal, at least that.
Wow.
And there's been some interesting stuff that happened this month. I would also say, like, very interesting resource published by Carbon Gap. They do these readiness assessments. They've done, I think, 4 or 5 now. They've done one on Spain that we're probably going to talk about in the next episode just recently. But it's really nice because they look at all the potential for carbon removal, the goals, the shortcomings, like everything. And they held a nice event in Berlin. And for the occasion, we also released a special episode on our podcast on the CDR Policy Scoop on Germany. And Germany's still on track to spend money on removal projects this year and to procure removals, right? So we're seeing progress. But yeah, it's happening amidst a much more challenging policy environment.
Well, that's in the category of, people want to solve problems regardless of what else is going on. As long as huge policy isn't fully extinguishing the possibility of the activity, I think people are doing it anyway. I have that argument a lot with people here when they say, oh, it's not like DAC is not efficient or whatever. I said, look, it's going to work for people in Kenya. It's going to work for people in other places. People are going to do it regardless. Anyway.
One more point here, more point that I think is important is something that my American colleagues often taught me was fly under the radar while you can. In the US, as soon as you get onto the radar, you're kind of screwed because it becomes a binary topic and you have to choose a camp and it becomes really problematic, right? And if we see the success of, for example, biochar in the US, is because it's kind of still very much under the radar. And this is something that for now, I feel CDR in most places, including Germany, is under the radar, but it's only a matter of time. And it's kind of the more successful you get, the less you can do this. But this is what I feel is happening here, is we can still get good work done because it hasn't been politicized yet.
Well, that's interesting because that's coming to the next point. But before we go there, do you remember I sent you something? There was a map of where renewable energy was flourishing in the United States. And a lot of red states are doing a whole lot better than blue states. And someone said, well, that's uncomfortable. But in terms of politicizing things, you're absolutely right. And there's also, money will flow where it works and where there's advantage. And obviously, energy of any kind is important right now, obviously. So, and to the point number 4, is CDR dead in the United States? We had been talking about this too. Speaking of under the radar, there's a lot of projects that are still going on. Biochar, by the way, being extremely popular now, more and more. But anyway, tell me about what you heard from your friends.
I've had a couple of conversations, plus fruitishly also other podcasts did similar episodes at the same time. Because I guess people want to understand what's going on. What triggered this was I saw that the Congress appropriated, I want to say $150 million almost for carbon removal in 2026. And I really couldn't make sense of that headline. I was like, what does that mean? There's no one to spend it. All the people who are going to use it in the DOE got fired. Like, what does that actually mean? And so we had Professor Jennifer Wilcox on, who used to lead the DOE for 4 years and who was fantastic. We had Senator Josh Becker on from California. And the picture that emerges is that basically the administration and Congress on CDR, like on many topics, are completely out of step. And so you've got Congress, which is testament to the great work done, and that's a bit positive news. They are behind CDR. They've decided we want $150 million to be spent this year on CDR. That's great in itself. But then the department that this is assigned to doesn't exist anymore. There's a new department. The people are gone, right? So it won't get spent probably. And in the US, apparently it doesn't then just go away. It goes to the next year, which is good. In Germany, it would be gone if it doesn't get spent. But yeah, there's much more to it. But basically, the bottom line is there are big champions in Congress for CDR. They keep doing the work. They keep introducing bills. They keep appropriating money. But it's not going to go out on the other side until the administration kind of aligns with what's happening in Congress, which we don't know if it's actually going to happen in the near future.
And don't forget there's the states as well, right? So states
Exactly.
matter. And, I just also another podcast I just finished doing on my break was I finally discussed the collapse of this biochar project in New York due to the political pushback against
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
in New York. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I have that. That's live. And Raymond Appy of Northeastern Biochar Solutions. And he was wanting to pyrolyze sludge, right? So he wants to do what Pyreg does. Yeah. And so he got kicked out of this one community. However, in another state, I forgot which one, I think is Connecticut. Or anyway, he's got several projects now. And actually in New York State, there's other communities that saw what happened but want what he has. So in terms of money projects in America, obviously it's helpful when the federal government's on your side because there's a lot of money there, but there's obviously not just state but local, regional, county money and efforts all over, so it's very complicated. But I did follow up with that.
And what Jennifer Walker also said, which I thought was spot on, is there is serious money flowing to specific areas: geothermal, AI, critical minerals, and those are all areas where CDR can play a role, but you need to get a bit creative. So her appeal was basically, if you're a CDR company in the US today, look at the key topics that are relevant to this administration and figure out how you can contribute to those and do CDR as a co-benefit.
Correct.
And then money will exist.
Right. Well, we've said this a lot together on this, is that CDR, non-political, fits within a future structural energy mix, right? And materials mix. So, and innovation too. So yeah, it's going to find its place, but as long as it's not politicized and not based on, moral dimensions, especially with this administration, you're going to get a lot. You're going to get, even though moral dimensions would be great, let's get practical, right? Speaking of all that, number 5, we're flowing really nicely from each one. You say, I can't sugarcoat this. Yeah, we talked about this at the end of the last discussion. This really does not help at all.
No, it's a repeal of the endangerment finding of the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, which is probably the biggest strike that Trump has done so far on climate policy in the US. And it kind of erodes the foundation that a lot of other policy that has greenhouse gases, CO2 in them, is based on. And the thing that I'm watching most is, what does that mean for the 45Q tax credit? And I asked Professor Wilcox, and she was the first one who kind of gave me a bit of pause, because she was like, yeah, maybe in the future they could go after it now. And that was, I hadn't heard that before. And that would obviously be pretty devastating. 45Q was in the Big Beautiful Bill Act kind of reinforced. So people are assuming it's safe. And it has very long time horizons, which for investors are very important. So without 45Q, a lot of carbon management, not just CDR projects, would not be viable in the US anymore. Mm-hmm. And so, I guess we'll have to watch if they're going to go after 45Q in the future or not.
Yeah, I don't know enough about that specific point. All I know is when it first came out, I said that really doesn't help at all, especially, because a lot of corporates are going to run for cover saying, oh, that's no longer an issue. So that's not good. Right? Yeah. But okay, and to your point of difficulty, number 6, we have CDR's consolidation era has begun. Yeah, that's inevitable given the climate.
Yeah, and what I find interesting here is that it, like some people see it as, you know, a negative sign, and some people see it as a
Yeah.
positive sign. And there's been some interesting stuff written about it. For example, Noah Deitch, who we mentioned many times before, also a great thought leader in the space. He wrote a piece about why we should embrace this type of consolidation because of the efficiencies that it brings. And what triggered it was that Eon and Teradot merged to enhance rock weathering companies. Previously, obviously, we've seen mergers in the DAC space already, and there's probably much more to come. But again, we should welcome it. There's too many CDR companies out there right now. It's probably not optimal. And if the right companies can get together, it can probably lead to a lot of positive things.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, that actually bleeds into CDR 2.0 number 7, CDR 2.0, where, gone are the days you're writing that CDR and climate or the rage and the opportunities are infinite. I let you speak to that, but I have a solution.
I'm
Go
very
ahead.
keen to hear your solution. But yeah, no, two
Yeah.
people that I like to follow, Robert Högland and Jason Grillo, they both wrote pieces in the last month about kind of reflecting on where are we? Where is CDR? Are we past the hype cycle? Are we entering a valley of death? Where are we going? And I think the punchline is we're definitely beyond the first hype. And now it's kind of a wake up moment for a lot of companies. The demand that everyone was hoping for is not materializing. Once Microsoft starts to tone down their purchases, it will be hard to keep growing as a sector.
Yeah.
The prediction is we can probably keep it steady through other buyers, but not necessarily expand from where we are today once Microsoft does less. And so what we should focus on now is very much optimizing for learning, optimizing for these gradual improvements, and be ready for when things pick up again.
Yeah.
Which is not the story that a VC wants to hear, who is looking for a 3-5 year kind of exit scenario, but that's probably a more realistic assessment of where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would argue that there is a movie called Legion 44 that was made to support the CDR industry. One interesting thing that I've, given that we have done movies in the climate space for the last 30 years, it's interesting that this industry didn't fully push out this film. And maybe it's because they thought, oh, it's like my project or our project, and they're doing their project. But I didn't put myself in that film, and it's completely it designed to educate the general public about CDR, and it's completely apolitical. It's completely based in the primary sort of drivers of what it is and how it fits into civilization, right? It's legitimately a primer on
Yeah, it's
what
a
it
great
is.
asset.
So for the industry that's looking for a story, they should obviously start by just say, hey, check out this film. This is where we begin here. Anyway, it's not a plug for me. It's a plug for you guys. Anyone who's listening to this.
I couldn't agree
So,
more.
all right, number 8, net zero reimagined. Yeah, what does that look like in
So
2026?
Robert Högland is doing a lot of thinking about essentially how net zero for corporates should look like, because essentially we have these frameworks for net zero for corporates and they are not really working.
Mm-hmm.
The way, like the main one is the science-based target initiative, SBTI, we spoke about it. And what you see is companies, even that are very environmentally focused, stepping back or not even signing up for an SBTI target, not because they don't take it seriously, sustainability, but because it doesn't work for them. And what do I mean with that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and this is something that he really touches on, that there are emissions that are within a company's control, and there are a lot of emissions that are outside a company's control.
Sure.
And that really depends on the business and sector that you're working in. And so this one size fits all model really doesn't work. What he's suggesting is to move to something which is essentially operational net zero, which is fully within a company's control. That's scope 1, 2, and business travel. And then kind of conditional net zero, which is all the other stuff that you don't have control over, but you should be explicit that you don't have control over it. And then you should fund activities, whatever that is, that could even be advocacy work, to try to reduce emissions in those areas. But that is an interesting one because even that operational net zero, if a company were able to claim that, that would drive, I think, so much interest. And that would lead to real purchases of removals. But that concept currently doesn't exist. And so instead, we have this kind of impossible to reach 2040, 2050 net zero, which is not driving any action in 2026. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, it's a good way to adapt, you know? It's a good
Yeah, but
adaptive
how?
thing.
I mean, these it's very hard to adapt these frameworks. It's very hard. So I like it as a kind of thought-provoking piece, and I know he's really trying to bring his opinions into the right fora. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's a tough one.
I hear that. Again, back on the early days of discussing climate, it's just over time and keep talking. It's, you know, you just have to keep talking. It's relatively new. I mean, this is very new for the public to wrap their heads around, right? Anyway, number 9, the trailblazer ensuring CDR is bankable. Yeah, that's obviously extremely important. Insurance.
Insurance is extremely important. It's something without which you cannot scale any sector, and it's something that in removals is very new. It doesn't. We didn't create the removal sector with insurance, right? And Natalia Dorfman and Kita, they are probably the first player that's trying to provide custom insurance for removals. You know, non-delivery risk, reversal risks, all that stuff, and that is extremely well received. So yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to her work and the incredible work at Kita. I know that they link up with bigger banks and insurances and try to create that connection. Obviously, in future we'll need much more of that. Like this is just the very beginning. If the sector is going to scale to gigatons and billions, there will have to be all sorts of insurance products. But yeah, for anyone interested in that topic, I think Kita is the first place to go.
Great. And finally, 10, snow today, gone tomorrow. Yeah, you have a mixed. I thought you'd be excited that the Olympics were in town. Just kidding. I know you're not excited.
So for those who don't know, the Olympics were in town. I am from Cortina d'Ampezzo, where the Winter Olympics just wrapped up. And it was quite, yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with the Olympics, especially when they're happening in my town. There's a lot of good stuff about it. There's a lot of awful stuff. And from an environmental perspective, it's mainly awful stuff. I wrote a LinkedIn post about all the stuff that happened concretely where I come from. But I also wanted to connect it to Aidan Preston's piece. He's a kind of fellow sport enthusiast, and he writes a lot about CDR in sports, which I'm actually very interested in. We saw, for example, a big announcement from Mercedes-Benz Formula One team last month. But there are some interesting use cases in sports, and he wrote specifically about winter sports. Because winter sports, I mean, the snow is gone in most winter resorts, right? Like, so more than anything, anyone interested in winter sports or any winter sport resort should really be looking at how to maintain their business, right? Which requires less global warming. And so I thought it was an interesting occasion for the Winter Olympics to talk about CDI and winter sports. But yeah.
Yeah, that was why Christoph and Jan founded Climeworks primarily, right? Because of their skiing.
I didn't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the story goes that they were having to start climbing little ladders to go, because things were melting. And yeah, it was a skiing based inspiration. Yeah, I think back on the insurance and what's happening in the Gulf and the war. I think what we're all going to be learning and talking about more is energies and how we create energy. And CDR, the CDR world is going to be, and DAC and all of the biochar energy. I mean, all of this stuff is going to be very important to consider given the hyper concentration of energy coming out of that part of the world, right? So the decentralization of energy, now, obviously it's not going to fill the gap in time, but certainly there are other ways to generate energy. And the CDR industry is part of that, wouldn't you say?
And we're seeing a whole shakeup of the energy system, especially in the US right now as well, with data center build out, right? And I mean, again, I really don't know, but I'm operating under, I think, a fairly decent assumption that there's a bit of hype in the whole data center build out. I'm not saying there's not a lot that will stay, but there is potentially a bit of overbuilding. And we're building out a ton of energy infrastructure that probably needs a new use case in a few years. So that's how I'm watching.
I actually was talking to somebody who was part of restarting 3 Mile Island in New York for data center for Microsoft. So that's real. But anyway, I'm very happy that we were able to persevere. Let's keep soldiering on as we move into the future here.
Thanks,
Hang
Layla.
in there. Try to get some sleep. Okay. Take care. All right. Bye.